This is the front panel of my Talbot Express camper van. I've just taken down the temporary shelter that I have around it outside to avoid the worst storms of the winter, hopefully. I'll get it back up again in the springtime. In the meantime though, there's a number of jobs that I can bring in from outside and do in the comfort of the garage. And one of them is to restore this whole panel section. It's got a lot of... It's composed of a big box section all across here, and it wouldn't really be possible to get in at it to clean off the worst of the rust. So I think for this, using a chemical rust remover is the best option, and I'm going to try the Evaporust, which I used on the rear suspension of the Daihatsu Charade. The best way I can see to do that is to make up a tight box. And I'm going to use some bits of old shelving that I've trimmed up and make a box around this, immerse it at least half, and then do that for 24 hours and then turn it over and get the other side done. You can see it's quite rough around the bottom edges of this. I'm going to trim off a few little bits with the grinder just so I don't have too many sharp corners, and I'll remove this, although the product is safe with plastics. I'll remove this shield, there's no point having that in there. And I'm also going to grind off this bit of sealant along here. And I'm going to use, I've ordered 4 5-litre drums of the Evaporust, and I have one leftover one that I used with the Charade. That stuff's been used a couple of times. So I'll have 25 litres. So hopefully my sums will be correct, and I'll have enough liquid with that. The value of that amount of Evaporust is similar to what a panel like this might cost second hand, and certainly a new one would probably be worth twice the amount. So I think it's still an economical way to do it, and the thing is I can use the Evaporust again, and I've been getting an idea that maybe I'll use it on the wheels as well, because there's areas of those that the wire wheel on the grinder just won't get in at. The product can be used a number of times again. So I'll crack on with making a rough box out of some recycled material.
This may seem like a lot of effort to go to, but as far as I can see, there are none of these panels available anymore. So thanks to E Fox Engineers Ltd for the Evaporust. I don't think I had many other options for doing this well. I'm removing the plastic panel just so that the product gets at as much of the metal as possible. I'm now taking off some of the sharper edges as well, because the immersion tank I'm going to make is just lined with plastic and I don't want it to tear. There's some sealant along the leading edge of the front panel, so I'm just knocking that off. Again, just to get in at as much metal as possible. Just removing any loose rust there with the hand wire brush. And now blowing out any loose material from inside the box section. The airline is really handy for this. So although I made some measurements when I was calculating how much liquid I needed, I just lined up my box materials around the panel, judging how much space I'd need around it. I'm certainly not a carpenter, but just making this good enough to last for this task. It might also be something I modify in future to suit different sized panels.
Now, one last thing I need to do is drill a hole in it so that I can drain it effectively. That's the reason I have it up on the ladder as well, is that I can manage the liquid inside without having to lift it later. I've decided to cut myself a new piece because it's just too much risk of a tiny little hole causing a leak. So I don't know how well this is going to work with the corners, so fingers crossed. I'm going to do the box section first because it's the area that needs it the most. Corners look okay. Okay, let's start pouring it in and start checking for leaks. I'm not wearing goggles because this stuff's actually supposed to be that safe, but at the same time I wouldn't use it as eye wash. No sign of any leaks yet anyway.
The hole I drilled was really an emergency bailout. If it started to leak, I could rapidly empty it through there. I emptied all 5 litre drums into the tank, and then
I filled up all the cans with water and I'm going to place them in to displace a bit more of the liquid.
the liquid didn't come up quite as high as I had hoped, and that's probably because I'd allowed a bit more margin of error around the panel so that the corners of the plastic didn't get torn.
I've left that to soak for 24 hours, so it's really going to be interesting to see what's changed. The water's looking a little bit rusty. I might slosh it around a bit. The moment of truth.
Most of the rust had actually disappeared, and there was just this kind of orangey residue that would rinse off.
I'll take that outside now and power wash it, and we'll get a good look at it then. So I rinsed this outside and dried it off with the airline, and I'm going to stick it in to do the other side now. This will probably flash rust, so when the other side has been in overnight, I'll probably turn it over again just to do this, especially the internal sections of this, a little bit more, and then rinse it off again to limit any new rusting and before I get a treatment on it. That's had 24 hours to do the bottom end. I'm going to I'll take it out and rinse this off outside with water and dry it a bit with the airline, and then, as I said, I'm going to just put the other side in just for a short overnight to get rid of the bit of flash rusting, because the internals of this are the most important area to get with the Evaporust. We'll then get some paint on it straight away, and then I can carry out my repairs when I'm ready. I'll just drop this back in here until tomorrow morning. That's been in overnight, so I'm going to take it out and I'll rinse it outside. As I say, it's only the sediment at the bottom that needs to be kept out of the drains, and the rest of it is supposed to be relatively safe. I've emptied the water out of these, so I'm going to scoop up as much as I can. I'm not going to use the little drain option that I created for myself, because I'm going to use this bath for something else again. Unfortunately, the liquid didn't reach up as far as these adjusters for the headlights, but luckily I can access both sides of the panel, so I'll be able to wire wheel that with the grinder, and I'll just dose these with a bit of penetrating oil so that I can take them off, and I'll put those in a smaller container of the liquid. So I'll leave them to soak a while.
I left the Q10 penetrating oil on for half an hour over lunch. I was very impressed with how easily these came out. I didn't try them before I put it on, but they looked pretty seized to me. So these bits will only get cleaned up with the grinder, and it will be interesting to compare them to the bits that have been soaked. While I had the wire wheel out, I couldn't resist going over some of the areas exposed by the Evaporust, and they really shined up well. I removed the remains of this bracket for the headlight, and I also cleaned up behind that. I blew out all the box sections with the airline. And then used a degreaser on all of the surfaces to prepare it for paint. The paint products were all supplied by mixgarage.com. I mixed up 200ml of epoxy primer. It's a 50-50 mix of paint and hardener. And then I set the gun for a really small circle of spray and a low volume of paint, and worked my way along through all these little openings on the box section to try and get paint everywhere on the inside. Not worrying about how tidy this was, priority was to get it covered. I continued on then and sprayed all the outside with a broader fan, and it turned out like this.
I'm really happy how well this has turned out. I can carry on now and cut out the rusty bits and put in my welded repairs, but the panel was just so bad beforehand with rust flaking off it every time you touched it or went near it. It was really disheartening, and now I feel I have something I can work with, and in fact it's actually inspiring me about the whole project. I think the thought that I could do really good repairs to the outside but not be able to sort out internal areas like this was really bothering me. So it's given me a real peace of mind that when I've finished repairing this panel, it'll actually be better than new. I really managed to get the paint up inside all these areas, and I will use a cavity wax as well after I've done my repairs, because otherwise that will catch fire when I'm doing some welding. So I'm very happy with using the Evaporust to treat especially the interior areas of this box section.